All right, hello. Today is the 27th of November. I'm Paul Glumaz with Lyndon LaRouche, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. Okay. So we are coming into a very interesting period. Um, there is a kind of a stampede going on among the leadership of most nations in the world, much like the stampede that went up to the Yukon when it was discovered, gold was discovered up there. And the gold that's been discovered is really the China. The Chinese have the gold, and they can make the investments. And the international financial system, centered in Wall Street and the City of London, cannot make the investments because their whole system is bankrupt. All they're doing is bailing out the banks. All they're doing is propping up the international derivatives market. They don't have the funds to invest. They've been cutting funds everywhere. They've been forcing governments to bail them out. They've been forcing governments not to invest in needed repairs and needed infrastructure. They've been forcing governments for decades now to slash and more slash and more slash. And they're still doing it. All to bail out the bankrupt financial system. The whole system has been bankrupt. It's been bankrupt for a long time. They keep the illusion of a financial system by controlling the dollar system, by controlling the dollar system and keeping the whole system afloat by just cutting. And we've come to a point where governments all over the world are desperate. And 4.5 years ago, the Chinese came on the scene with the Belt and Road Initiative, and the BRICS nations began to set up an alternative financial system, which is not yet fully set up. And now we have a situation where all these countries, from Djibouti to Panama, which just recently recognized China, to Bolivia, to Vietnam, to Laos, all these countries are moving right now to negotiate with China, with both the private and the public sector of China, the agreements for development. And the Chinese are looking for investment in those infrastructure projects that will yield the most increase in the actual economic activity of those nations. And thereby, it's a sound investment. The Chinese have a very different idea of profit, generally, than in the Wall Street crowd, the criminal Wall Street crowd. Their idea of profit is you try to minimize the profit so that you can maximize the market. You minimize the profit so you can create an affordable product that is more affordable, and you actually you look for ways not to make a windfall profit, but rather sustainable profit over a long period of time. So their idea of profit is a sustainable one. It's one that allows them to continue to be in business, because what the importance is not the profit, it's the importance of being able to maintain the business, being able to maintain the nation, being able to maintain the economy, being able to build. Because the Chinese are operating on future generations. If they squeeze it, everybody gets squeezed in the short term, then there's nothing left for your descendants. So the whole thing is oriented differently. And now that the Chinese have reached a certain stage of their development, they can now go all out on a global development perspective, but only from the standpoint not of immediate profits or from the standpoint of windfall profits, but from the standpoint of the economic development and the profit that that's going to generate. But it's not just LaRouche's ideas. It is LaRouche's ideas that the Chinese are adopting, but it's also LaRouche's ideas also resonate with a certain quality of Chinese character, which has nothing to do with communism. It has to do with the civilization of China and the history of China and its peoples and its family ideas, its idea of family. So you have a very different culture which is coming on the scene, and in which people say, "Oh well, the Chinese will work for nothing" or something like that. But that's not really the case. What's really going on is that the Chinese want to continue working. The average Chinese wants to continue working. They want to continue working so they can continue to have children. They can continue to have a future. And that's a very different concept than currently operating in the United States. If you go to a public library and you see that on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Friday evening, or a Saturday, Sunday, you're going to see a large number of Asian individuals studying. You go to any school, you'll see a large number of Asian individuals studying. You won't see a lot of non-Asian individuals studying there. So it's a different culture. It's a different orientation. And what's happening is countries all over the world are now getting on board. There was a conference in Hungary of 16 Eastern European nations. The European Union is completely freaking out because they're like saying, well, we joined the Euro. We expected to get something from it. We didn't get anything, but you know what? And our population has suffered because we joined the Euro. I thought we left communism to join capitalism, and our capitalism of the Euro isn't working. And now we have the Chinese offering to develop our country and give us a better life, and you guys are saying we can't do it. It's illegal. It's against the EU. So what is that all about? So that's the kind of thing that's coming out of the conference in Budapest right now, of the 16 plus 1, 16 Eastern European countries plus China. Now there was also a major conference over the weekend that the Schiller Institute, which I'm a part of, occurred in Germany. 2-day conference. It was very significant. Helga gave perhaps one of her most incredible speeches. And there were many nations from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East represented. And it was the most successful conference we've ever had. Over 200 participants. And one of the keys to the conference was the question of developing Africa, which is now on the table finally. We started a campaign in 1980, 78, 79, 80. We've been in the forefront of a fight to develop Africa. We didn't, instead of that, they got guerrilla wars, tribal wars, child armies, Boko Haram, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Genocide in Zaire, which is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. All of this stuff has been going on. But now, there's economic development taking place. China's been deeply involved in the development of Africa, especially all along, but especially in the last few years. And now the issue is on the table. Are we going to? Is that huge water project, the Transaqua project of taking the water from the Congo Basin, sending it north, is that going to come off? There's discussions on that now. This is a different world. These people have now seen a different future than the bleak future of child armies and famine and exploitation of their resources by multinational companies with no development, no development of the rail infrastructure, no development of the agriculture, just looting and more looting and more looting, which has been the fate of Africa for, going back many, many, many centuries. Now they see a difference, a different world, a different potential. So it's like the Yukon, the discovery of gold in the Yukon, the discovery of the Chinese potential to help your country and develop you. Now, one place that has profoundly discovered this is West Virginia. The governor of West Virginia, Jim Justice, had a press conference, the most incredible press conference, where they discussed how they got the 80 some $billion 20-year deal with China. But the deal was not just it was not just to develop and exploit the resources of the energy resources, the massive energy resources, oil and gas that West Virginia has, but it also is about building the facilities to turn that oil and gas into actual refined products. This is the most incredible thing, and other states are discovering this. And you have to understand, West Virginia has been brutally treated by the especially the Obama administration. They've been brutally. The people there have the highest opioid addiction. They've been treated really bad, and this is kind of the heartland of America, along with Ohio and Pennsylvania. And now the Chinese are offering a way out, and the Trump administration is not stopping it as the Obama administration was, but is actually supporting this process. Well, it still leaves open the whole question of how the financial system of the West, which is bankrupt, is going to be dealt with. Is it going to crash in such a way as to collapse everything, or will the United States and the rest of the world move to a different system? Now, there is a discussion going on among the BRICS nations now of moving into a gold-based system of trade outside the dollar. And this is not necessarily bad for the United States, because the dollar that exists outside the United States is not the U.S. dollar. It's the petrodollar. It's the British dollar. It's the drug dollar. It's the dollar of crime. It's the dollar of blackmail. It's the dollar what have you. And that dollar doesn't do any good for the United States. The dollars that are used by the Americans internally is another story. The dollars that go outside the United States and leave the United States and go into offshore tax havens and never come back, but are used to create to maintain this whole situation of spiraling quadrillions of dollars of derivative speculation, that's not helping Americans. The dollars that Americans that leave the United States for those kinds of things, to evade taxes, to do whatever, in exchange for drugs, whatever, financial speculative dollar is not part of the real dollar that is maintained in the United States. So the United States won't lose by having the global dollar no longer value, because the U.S. people, the people of the United States, are what's valuable. The industries, the potential future industries, because we shut down most of our industries, but the potential future of America is what's valuable, and that's where we're headed. And how that's going to come about, with Wall Street still having tremendous political power inside the United States. They control the Treasury. They control the economic advisors around Trump. They want this tax cut for corporations because the corporations are bankrupt, and they want to alleviate some of the burden on the corporations so that they can prop up the financial system better. This tax break is not about creating jobs. It's about bailing out the banks. The healthcare system is not about, with all the insurance companies having their hands in the thing. Well, the insurance companies are owned by the banks, the same banks. They're too big to fail. So the whole healthcare system is geared towards bailing out the banks. Everything is geared towards bailing out the banks. The Federal Reserve has said they will not allow any infrastructure, massive infrastructure development of the United States, because that will divert the necessary bailout monies to the international banks. So this is what you're dealing with. But this new situation that's emerging very rapidly, the Belt and Road Initiative, is taking the world by storm. It's taking many of America's states by storm. The mayor of Houston right now is in China with a large delegation of business people to talk about how China can help develop the area around Houston, which is a very poor area. This is going on. This is happening. There's nothing. There's no discussion of it in the media. You're not hearing about it in the media. The other thing you're not hearing about is the fact that Donald Trump has got a war on drugs. Oh my God, he has a war on drugs. You mean he really has a war on drugs? He does. And it's just getting started. And it's going to grow. Because this whole drug thing is a cornerstone of this whole international financial system. It's the cornerstone that's bleeding the world. And then, under Obama and Bush, but under Obama especially, the pharmaceuticals got into the drug business big time and began convincing all the doctors to prescribe opioids, which they didn't need to in most cases. And they got people addicted. We have a massive addiction problem, exploding addiction problem, but it's not coming through the streets. It's coming through the doctor's office. This is criminal beyond belief. To opiate the entire large portion of the population is suffering from medical conditions, to give them these highly addictive opioids. This is the pharmaceutical industry. This is the bankers. Okay, this is where the bankers are coming from. This is where Obama was coming from. So you have 33,000 gangs, criminal gangs in the United States. The British call this mediating structures. Right? Not all of them push drugs, but they are the potential retail market for the drug cartels. So as people become more addicted and they can't get their prescription drugs, well, there's cheaper heroin on the street, and that is skyrocketing as well. And these gangs are part of that. And the Mexican cartels, well, they were built up during the Obama period. They were big, but they've gotten a lot bigger. The Sinaloa cartel probably controls a majority of U.S. drug distribution. They had a nice deal with Obama. They financed his presidential campaigns and other people's campaigns in exchange for weapons, so that they could, have more power inside Mexico. All of this is going to be taken on by the Trump administration, which is why you have such a furious assault. All of this plus, you have such a furious assault on the Trump administration. Now, in the middle of all this, we've come to the problem of the sex scandals. The sex scandals. Everybody's coming out exposing, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. But let me tell you something. This is creating a climate of fear in the entire political establishment, and in anybody that has any power is now fearful that they're going to be targeted by people coming forward, whether they're telling the truth or not, or whether their memories have changed over time, whatever. This is the environment that you now have. And this is how British, by the way, get changes in Parliament. They have a sex scandal and the guy resigns. That's the traditional British way of running politics. Is they don't run politics through politics, they run politics through sex scandals. So now we have politics being run through sex scandals in the United States. And it's very bad because it besides distracting people, it creates another level of fear and terror and blackmail in the society. And you have these women's rights people, these feminists running loose, attacking all these politicians, attacking everyone. But you never hear them attack the gangs that rape the women in the poor neighborhoods. You never hear them attack ISIS, which rapes women. You never hear them attack terrorist groups which rape women. You only hear them, when somebody is somebody that's well known or important, that he might have done something inappropriate, and it's now cause for removal, from their position. But you never hear them go after the real rapists, the mass genocidal rapists. Oh no, they're not out to get those guys. Those are the good guys. Those are the ISIS. Those are the gang. The gangbangers. They're okay. It's people like Charlie Rose or John Conyers or this guy Ray Moore, or whoever, they're the problem, right? They didn't, whatever they did or didn't do, it's and all the allegations, and then who knows how much is what where sexual harassment ends, where sexual harassment begins, who's telling the truth. It's all becomes in the media. It's all attack, and you don't know who's telling what, and then it's a total mess. And this was begun with the Clinton thing back then. Clinton has definitely had a very serious problem, but that became the basis of the impeachment of Clinton. So this whole thing has been a problem, and it's not how we're going to solve the problem that this nation faces. It also is not the culture you want to have. You don't want to have a culture of everything is reduced to sex. Everything is reduced to sex on TV and so forth. So this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with, and then how many of these people, these politicians, are gonna want to change their perspective now that everything is changing? How many of them are going to want to go maybe work with Trump? How many are going to want to maybe get some Chinese economic development in their neighborhood? How many want to do that? Well, what happens? Well, if you do it, you're gonna get attacked for whatever allegations you're gonna get. So you don't know. I'm not saying that that's the way it works, but I have a very bad feeling about this whole sex thing. I think it's another way of terrorizing and blackmailing the political. It's an opportunity. It's to prevent them from acting on behalf of the country, which the FBI has done a very good job of blackmailing people, blackmailing politicians, to prevent them to do what's good for the country. Only what's good for the international financiers. Only what's good for the banks. Only what's good for bailing out the system. And that system is now being challenged in the most profound way. And people want to live. People want a future. People want economic development. They're not like these radical ecologists, we're going to create global warming the more we develop, therefore we can't develop. Or, global warming is the most important problem on the planet. Or if you're a climate change denier, then you're worse than the ISIS, which is what Obama was saying. Which is what these people were saying. I mean, what kind of world is that? Well, we have to all learn to live with less, as the Queen of England said to the Commonwealth a few years back. We all got to learn to do with less. We consume too much. We humans are just spoiling the planet, and we consume too much. We just have to learn to do with less. So, I'm sure those people watching this now are not of the type that believe we need to learn to do with less. Maybe I should learn to do with less food. I might get a little thinner. But nonetheless, we are entering a very different period. And the problem is it's not being reported in the media. All that they're reporting is the commies are coming. The Chinese commies are coming to take over. Da, 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 da. You don't want to be a slave to the Chinese. You don't want to be, Australia is becoming a Chinese satrap. And now Canada is next. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, is going to be in China next week. And, all over the Canadian media, there's this like, is he going to sell out Canada to the Chinese? And then Trump, he sold out Canada. He sold out America to the Chinese. You don't want those pinko bastards taking over. We're Americans. We're not Chinese. You can just see all this now in the media, and their aggressive behavior. They're not an economy. They're just a government, which is an extension of the Communist Party, and politics is what they do with business. Let me tell you something. Chinese are businessmen. All Chinese, to some degree or another, are businessmen. They think like businessmen. They're not really communists in the way they think, but But a lot of the bad ones have been put in prison. They put Xi Jinping has put about 50,000 of these Communist Party people in prison. He's trying to end the whole corruption that developed in the Communist Party. Where you got to pay for you got to give a little something under the table to get anything done. That's what happened. That's changed, and of course that's very important that's changed. So anyhow, I think I wish you all a very good holiday season. I think we have some hope on the horizon, and I'm looking forward to having better news later.